I knew it. Another Hurrdat Media Production.
The trial of Tom Girardi is now in full swing. Day 5 of testimony, day 6 of the actual trial. This is Predator in Plain Sight, exposing Tom Girardi. I'm Chris Hansen, and Kimberly Archie is joining me as my partner in this adventure as we continue to cover what many believe is the trial of the century. Kimberly, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Nice to talk to you today.
Quite an adventurous day. We've heard so far in the trial testimony from Joe and Kathy Rogomez, Judy Selberg, Alexa Galloway, who is a former lawyer at Tom Girardi's firm. And today we got testimony from Erika Saldana. And before I get into her testimony and who she is with you, Kimberly, it caused quite a stir in the courtroom. She showed up with a mask on and she was COVID positive. Tell me what happened.
So it was said that she had tested positive 2 days ago for COVID, and she was still not feeling great and had a mask on. So that seemed very alarming to the judge. She didn't seem very happy that, they brought her in because, just yesterday there was testimony via Zoom by another witness. So they certainly could have done that for her. And so that's what they ended up doing. They moved her to isolation, and she appeared via Zoom and testified, as needed. And she did a great job. In fact, I think it's fairly unanimous among everyone who was there today that she was the most compelling victim so far. Her son passed away some years after his injury that brought them to Girardi Keys. And, one of her last encounters with Tom was on the last birthday before her son died. So she definitely broke down in tears, and the whole courtroom, she had everyone's attention.
How did the jury respond to Erika Saldana's testimony? Could you get a sense of that?
Well, again, it was pretty, across the board, everyone felt like that the jury responded the most to her of any witness so far.
And what do you think was the most compelling part of Erika's testimony? I mean, obviously, it's gut-wrenching, it's heartfelt. We're talking about the loss of her son, and then never getting properly compensated and essentially cheated, allegedly, by this powerful lawyer who was supposed to be her advocate.
Yeah, I think, when you have the layered effect, meaning she's the fourth victim to testify, I think the prosecutors probably had a good idea she might be the most compelling of the four witnesses. Her case, again, like the other cases, they got settlements and they didn't get all their money. And you can clearly see that by the deposits, and that they didn't get all of their money, that's true. And so, after you hear Joe and Kathy Rogomez, after you hear Judy Selberg, after you hear Josie Hernandez, I mean, here's just another person saying the same type of things that the other, victim clients have said. And now she's, grieving the loss of her son. And and as a mom who's lost a child, there's no worse pain. And I think the jury definitely could feel what she was feeling.
An IRS agent by the name of Ryan Roberson also started his testimony. Brief as it has been so far, where do we expect this IRS agent to take us in the trial?
Well, so far, he's been really effective. In fact, Kiki from Talk of Shame said, God, I wish he would have went first because, he's already showing charts and just laying it out and saying, hey, I did an audit. This is when the money came in. This is when the money came out. Boom, the people didn't get their money. It starts to become a lot more clear because, like we talked about in the last, podcast, that, this is a papers case. This is a wire fraud case. So, this gets down to the nitty gritty. And now the testimonies of the victims sort of come rushing back to you, because now it's clicked in your brain for sure that you can see that they didn't get all their money and that they're lying.
And we've seen the emotional toll that this has taken on these families, the Rogomezes, Erika, Saldana. And now this IRS agent is taking us really into the financial aspect of this. He's giving us a roadmap and exactly how this money was taken and where it went. And he's detailing the crimes. It would seem that this is adding up to be a very compelling criminal prosecution.
It is. And when you add all of the attorneys that have testified as well, like Alexa Galloway and then Aaron Scapa, who worked on Josie Hernandez's case, and then John Abassian, who referred Erika Saldana to Girardi case. When you have that type of testimony too, to back up the, victim clients, and then Ryan's, showing the roadmap visually for people to see, for the jury to see, I think this is just where the rubber meets the road, and you either understand or you don't.
The two lawyers who worked with Girardi at his firm, Erika and Alexa, they really take us inside this case in a way that no one else can, because they're telling the story about how Girardi was making up stories and making up excuses and lying to them and expecting a fellow lawyer to believe some of the BS reasons he was giving for not getting the money to the clients who so deserve this.
Right. And, they had this interaction with Tom, and they also showed the same patterns. Like when they would push back to Tom, he would get angry and be mean to them and, hang up the phone and other types of things. When one of them put in her notice, she handed him a letter of resignation. He threw it back at her.
As if that would do something.
And both of them resigned on December 6th, 2020. That's days before the website shut off, and, only a couple weeks before the bankruptcy is filed. So this is literally the end of the road for Tom's illustrious career. And these two young women who were law clerks there and very early in their careers. Imagine your first job as a lawyer is working for this crook, and you're being gaslit that you're doing something wrong because you're trying to get the clients their money, and you don't want to get turned into the bar because you don't have the control of the money.
It's shocking. And it's shocking to think that he had reached such a point in his own mind where he thought he could get away with this and convince educated lawyers to believe what he was saying.
Well, one of the things that people learn today, the jury and people in the courtroom, is that, when a trust account is overdrawn, the bank is required to report that to the bar. And, I've heard the horror stories from lawyers where somebody made a clerical error, like they weren't stealing. They literally made a mistake and it turned into the nightmare of their life because the bank turned them into the bar. And this is one of the components that people have not wrapped their head around, because we don't see lawsuits against the banks yet. I say yet because I hope it's not too late, because they really play a role in this. Why weren't the banks reporting Tom to the bar? And if they were, why wasn't the bar doing anything? He would overdraw the accounts, taking out these settlements before they even hit the books.
And one could presume that this was because he had such a powerful relationship with the banks, just like he had a powerful relationship with politicians and with judges, many of whom he was responsible for getting appointed. Is that fair?
It's completely fair. There are two bank executives. One of them, his first name is Paul. The other one is Mona. And they went to Nanobank, was the last bank that they were at. And you hear that bank name brought up over and over throughout this and during the bankruptcy. And they were at two other banks previous to that. And they were really good friends with Tom. I knew Mona. I sat next to her at one of the Christmas parties. One time at Thanksgiving, I was, especially like, shuffled over to talk to Mona. And again, she would come to the big party at CALA convention, which is the big California Lawyers Conference. And this is like the biggest party of the year for California lawyers. Girardi Keese would put on in Vegas at the conference, and the bank ladies there. I mean, it did make me wonder, even back then, before I knew what I know now. It seemed weird for the bank lady and the chief of police to come to stuff like that.
Yeah, it sure does. And it seems somewhat inappropriate in a lot of different ways. And the other thing that strikes me, Kimberly, is that you see other lawyers get disbarred for one complaint or two complaints, and Tom never got disbarred with more than 200 complaints. 120 involved client trust accounts over 40 years, and nothing was done until what, 2020?
And 100 lawsuits too, and dozens of those were for misappropriation of client funds. And they would get those, most of them tossed out. The only one I know that really paid the clients any money back was the Primpro case in 2015. But they never would prove they didn't steal the money. It would always be a statute of limitation or times barred type of thing. It wasn't like the judge ruled, oh, I found nothing wrong here. They would be like, oh, the client should have filed earlier. Sorry.
How did he get away with it for so long?
He had every level of law enforcement, the California bar, politicians, the banks, legal lending companies, the people that worked for him, the legal community, the plaintiffs bar. I mean, I think one of the most, I was thinking about it today. What is the most shocking thing to me at this point? Where are Tom's friends? Where are all the people that came to his parties and, would brag to me that they knew Tom? And half of them, Tom didn't even know who they were when I would ask. Where are they during this trial? If he's just an elderly man who was taken advantage of by the bookkeeper, by his partners, by, aging and not being able to remember, where are all the people that support him? Where's his family? Where's his brother, Robert Girardi, who's the conservator for him? He's not even there. Who's there for him and why? Why is no one there? Isn't that kind of telling a little bit?
Why is no one there?
Who would want to come sit there and support somebody that stole from burn victims and widows and orphans and, parents who buried their children and, people like Josie Hernandez who lost everything, and it was nothing due to her own fault. It was somebody else who harmed her, and he promised to help her. Who would want to stand up for that guy? Who would want to be seen in the courtroom looking like you're supporting somebody when pretty much the legal community is so quiet right now, except for the media connected to the legal community is covering this trial very well. And to me, I find that at least a little glimmer of hope that you have Law 360 and Bloomberg Law and law.com and Courthouse News going to, they're there every single day covering this.
Do we have, go ahead. I'm sorry. Do we have any sense, Kimberly, that the defense will have character witnesses or anybody who will talk about his alleged inability to discern reality from fantasy, right from wrong, that he was taken advantage of by the CFO of this law firm at some point? Who do we think the defense is going to put on the stand? Do we have any clue at all?
So I have not seen the witness list for the defense. So it must have been filed under camera because I haven't seen it in any filings yet, or perhaps I somehow missed it. But I think we can look at the competency hearing and get an idea of who some of the people might be. Girardi's daughter has been in the witness room for the defense this whole time and hasn't watched the trial. If you're a witness, you can't go into the courtroom. So Girardi's daughter, Jennifer Crane, she would be one witness. And Dr. Chu, looks like tomorrow, Dr. Chu is Tom's doctor, and she's a neurologist at USC Medical Center. she'll be testifying tomorrow out of order because she can only appear tomorrow. So we will be hearing from her, and there'll be a rebuttal witness to Dr. Chu, Dr. Darby, who is at Vanderbilt University, and he's a young doctor. He testified in the competency hearing for the government and did a really good job.
And that will be fascinating. I've covered a lot of trials, as you have, Kimberly, and I don't recall very many times somebody taking a witness out of order, for instance, for the defense when the prosecution's still presenting their case. That's a bit unusual, but it's just because of scheduling then.
I know, but I think it's an, these are the little things. It's like when you're playing sports, when luck goes your way a little bit and you're like, nah, I mean, you're not going to win on that alone, but if you've done the work, that little nudge could help you. And I think having Dr. Chu go and then putting Ryan Roberson back up. I mean, Ryan's who I've been waiting for. He's very good looking, which, people can say whatever, but people like to listen to good looking people. That's just how it goes. He's very appealing to the listeners there, particularly the jury and the judge. He knows the case better probably than anyone. And, he can explain it from a technical standpoint, even to laypersons, and being able to use some demonstrative evidence, like showing graphics and stuff to the jury. I mean, I love that he's going to go after Dr. Chu, because I feel like that does give a little bit of a leg up, to taking the sting out of maybe anything Dr. Chu could say, trying to proclaim that Tom's, incompetent or wasn't aware. Now, Dr. Chu was not treating Tom when these cases, occurred. She came after. So I find that a little bit interesting that she's testifying, and she's going to be testifying as an expert to what he could have been, his state of mind, earlier, which I don't know. That's, to me, a sticky place for her to be going when she wasn't treating him at that time.
Well, I also think it's a bit surreal for Tom Girardi to be sitting there at the defense table, and we know he's been interacting with his lawyers, and watch Dr. Chu, his neurologist, explain to the court how he's incapable of he shouldn't even be standing trial, is what their argument has historically been. Of course, he is now, but to say that he's incompetent, and to watch Tom Girardi listen to this, I can't imagine how much more dramatic it could get.
And, Tom's been taking notes. I mean, what would we pay to get a copy of Girardi's notes that he's been taking during this trial? We've heard him direct his lawyers a number of times. Kiki felt like he recognized her today, maybe because she's been there in the morning and after court every day filming him. He now is sort of, staring her down, not seeing her as a friendly face. So he's tracking, he's remembering, people that he hadn't even met before this. He showed emotion today. He definitely didn't seem to those watching that he seemed ashamed of Erika Saldana's case, and he should have. I don't know. Anyone could listen to her testimony and not feel ashamed if they had anything to do with her not getting her money.
Did he show emotion during the Erika Saldana testimony?
I mean, didn't see him cry, but you could see that he was reacting differently than he had to other testimony. Right.
And so next, they will take a break. They will put the neurologist on the stand. She will give her testimony. She'll be cross-examined. And then they go right back to the IRS agent, Ryan Roberson, who will continue telling his story and navigate the criminal case against Girardi.
Yeah, so the hot quarterback's going to go up after the doctor that's going to put everyone to sleep, rambling on about, neurodegenerative disease and scans and, tests that are not conclusive at this time from a science point of view. So it's going to be interesting to see what, happens tomorrow, that's for sure.
And do you think having the neurologist take the stand, does that give us some sort of a telegraph, a view of what the defense is going to ultimately come back with when it's their turn?
I think so. And I think, we've seen through the cross-examination of all the witnesses so far what their defense is. Chris Camone is the bad guy. Tom's a victim to this elder abuse scheme. The people around him that worked there took advantage of him too. He couldn't have formed intent. You got to show intent. That's going to be a part of the jury instructions, that Tom was aware what he was doing, not just that they didn't get their money, but Tom knew he was doing it. And, they're going to be building a case to try to put doubt in the minds of the jurors that Tom knew what he was doing. However, today, the attorney that testified that referred Erika Saldana, made it pretty clear that Tom's a crafty guy and that he's smart and clever and he knows what he's doing. We've had Josie and another attorney that represented Judy Sahlberg both say that Tom would try to confuse you. He wasn't confused. He was doing the confusing. So I don't know, Dr. Chu's got an uphill battle. And I always say, open hearts, you'll open someone's mind. So today when the jury had to feel a little something, it's going to be hard for them to forget what they were thinking when they heard Erika's Saldana's testimony.
And we think this will go on for another week or so?
Yeah, I think that once we see the prosecution rest, we'll see at least 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 of the defense. I just can't imagine how they're going to drag this out for that many days with testimony. I mean, in the competency hearing, we heard from the photographer guy that worked with Tom. We heard from some lawyer that knew him and played golf with him sometimes. We heard from the travel agent that was also his girlfriend. I mean, we're going to, in his maid. I mean, I just don't know how the travel lady / girlfriend or the maid or a guy he played golf with once in a while, or the photographer who was on payroll that had tons of invoices connected to cases that we don't really know how he was billing for those. I don't see how any of those are going to change the jury's mind or be like, oh my God, we think Tom's incompetent because the maid said so.
Right. And they can show where a lot of this money went. I mean, they can trace it into Erika Jayne's business accounts. They can trace it into his lavish spending. This isn't a mystery where all the money went. I mean, some of it may not be traced, but they know where a large portion of this money went, right?
Right. And this week they went over the funds that went to Erika, that paid her American Express bill, that paid her vendors to handle her career. And it was $21.8 million worth of money over 10 years. And they showed the money per year. And you could see, like, the first couple of years she was on Housewives, it was a couple $1 million each year for 2015 and 2016. And one of the things that was key about the Erika component of this and this money that went to her is that we've often heard her say on the show and on podcasts, and her lawyers perpetuate this narrative to the media, that Erika gave all her money to Tom and that it went into the trust accounts. But the one of the ladies that worked in accounting testified this week that she only saw one deposit come in from Erika, that it was always going out.
Do we think we'll see any clips of the show played at the trial?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, judges are pretty conservative, as
Right.
Federal courts even
Federal
more
courts.
conservative than that's why they don't allow cameras in. So I don't know. I mean, we did see one of the podcasts that that's done by a couple of housewives that had Erika on the show after I did the event with the victims. And we did see information about that in the competency hearing, what she had said on the show that really contradicted a story that was being, said about Tom in the competency hearing. So I guess it wouldn't surprise me to see something else Housewives related, but I don't know if they'll play a clip or any of your music. Could you imagine playing, I don't give any fucks to the judge? I really don't think she'd find that. I don't know. Maybe the prosecutor should put that in their closing.
Yeah. I think I'd put that out there just for impact to see where all that good money went on not so talented efforts. You know what it's like to cover a trial, Kimberly, and as a reporter, I know what it's like. You hear the prosecution's case and you think, wow, this person's guilty as homemade sin. Then you hear the defense present their case and you start to think, well, maybe there's reasonable doubt. But boy, the prosecution sure is presenting a strong case here, it seems so far.
Yeah, it's definitely like penny stocks. That's what lawsuits are. And especially when you're in the hands of a jury, any day it could be up, another day it could be down, or even 5 minutes could change the whole trajectory of the outcome of the trial. So I think everyone's going to be on pins and needles. And I know that, all of the victim clients that testified are coming for closing arguments and to wait for the verdict. And I think that's the moment kind of everyone's really waiting for in Los Angeles, and particularly in the legal community. Is he really going to get convicted? I think some people aren't saying much because they just want to see whether that happens or not.
Well, there's more testimony to come, more compelling twists and turns, and we will be covering it all right here. Kimberly Archie, thank you. We will stay in touch as we continue covering the Tom Girardi trial for this podcast, Predator in Plain Sight, Exposing Tom Girardi. With Kimberly Archie, I'm Chris Hansen.